Welcome to the Hey Chaplain podcast. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. Hey Chaplain is an officer wellness podcast produced for cops and covers topics like your career, your wellness, and law enforcement culture. On Hey Chaplain, you'll hear from dispatchers and federal agents, sheriffs, and U.S. Marshals, as well as the occasional community policing officer. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain share their hard-earned wisdom so that police officers everywhere can survive and thrive. Some of the most thankless jobs in law enforcement are the 911 operators and the police dispatchers, which in some communication centers might be the same person doing both jobs simultaneously. So, what motivates a person to work in communications for 20, 25, or 30 years when most of us couldn't do it for one? Today, I'm talking to Stacey Lowe. She's a veteran dispatcher here in Kansas City and came highly recommended. And I've got to tell you, this has turned out to be one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Stacey gave just the right insights to help us understand the humor and the pain that comes with being the voice on the other side of the radio. Here's Stacey Lowe. Hello, Stacey. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell me, how did you first get started in dispatch? Why go into this field?
It started back, I would say, like in the late 90s. I started dispatching for Duff & Ball, which is a trash company. First started in the roll-off part of the job, and then I got moved to commercial to assist the gentlemen in their routes on how the trucks picked up the trash throughout their routes.
Sure.
And then I found the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. It was originally a civilian job ran by civilian employees, and we were public safety dispatchers for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. And then a few years later, the police department took it back over, and I've been ever since.
Okay. So what drew you over to the police dispatch job?
The money. The money, the hours, the benefits. And then once I got trained, I really liked it. Started out as a 911 call taker and helping people. And then I got to the dispatching side. My biggest thing I love is finding people. When people get pulled over or are in trouble and they give fake names, I like digging.
Right.
And finding them, and here they have all these warrants.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the job. But again, helping
kind
people
of investigative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what was your biggest surprise coming into it? Were there things that you just did not expect or you didn't feel like you personally were ready for?
The mentally impaired people. When I first started trying to determine what was real and what wasn't, because you would have the mentally impaired people call and say someone was breaking in their apartment or their residence. And actually, it wasn't anyone. It was just, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but some part of their imagination or part of the voices in their head. Yeah. That was a big hurdle for me to determine what was true and what wasn't.
Yeah. I heard a call not that long ago where the gentleman thought that he had children living in his house. And, of course, he doesn't.
Correct.
But he thought he did. And so, how do you even make sense of that? What's real and what's not? I mean, all you have is what information they're giving you.
And now I've learned to pick up on their voice changes. We had a gentleman that used to call, well, he still does, calls all the time. And one particular evening he called and said his house was on fire. And last time we did that, it was someone next door to him just burning like leaves and limbs. But I picked up on his anxious of it's on fire. And we got there and his house was on fire.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Part of that though is almost job security because that intuition is something that you can do that a computer can't.
Right.
To know, how do I discern if this is legitimate or not? And what does my experience tell me? And so how long have you been doing the job?
23. I'm on my 23rd year.
23 years, man.
We were talking about that the other day at work, that we think that this job should be like 20 and done.
Right.
Because it's mentally and physically exhausting, constantly go, 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 go.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've met dispatchers, we're retiring. How many years? 30.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever had, 2 or 5 years. No,
well, those people wash out and you don't hear about them. In Kansas City, what's a typical call? What are the average calls like?
Domestics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So somebody's fighting with a intimate partner or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I don't like text to 911, because I cannot hear what's going on in the background. I can, they can tell me what's going on, but I can also hear in the background and, put it in the call for the officer safety.
Yeah.
He's talking about a gun, where they not text and not tell me, you can hear him, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you. Whereas a text, you don't hear that. It just, we're fighting.
Right.
Or
Right.
he's threatening me.
There's so much more
Correct.
information when you can hear the person's voice and hear the background noise and that kind of thing. That's fascinating.
Yep. I had a lady that called 911 and was screaming at me. Her baby was stuck in a tree. And I'm still thinking human-wise baby at first. So she tells me she not only needs the fire department, the police department, but she needs the National Guard and the Air Force.
Oh, really?
And so I'm thinking, okay, we call them Signal 3. They're mental. Mm-hmm. I'm like, is this lady Signal 3? And I'm talking to her. I'm like, well, how'd the baby get up in the tree? And she's like, oh, my God, he climbed up there. And then I'm like, okay, this is something. This is
not a human baby, right?
So I told her, I was like, ma'am, the cat will come down, just put some food at the end of the tree. And she said, well, what makes you so sure? And I said, have you ever seen a cat skeleton in a tree? And she hung up on me. I probably get in trouble for saying that, but that was years ago. But that's what I told her.
Statute of limitations already expired.
Yeah,
yeah. But that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it'll come down, you know.
That's funny.
We had a sergeant that came in to work, and he was a jokester, and he would, he felt like if you were in a bad mood or having a bad day, he'd squirt you with silly string in the cans?
Yes, yeah.
He'd spray you, out of the blue, just or he would get
Not everyone would appreciate that. Yeah.
But if you knew him, one day I got after him. He came in, he had a black turtleneck on and some brown corduroy pants. I was like, hey, Sergeant, the 80s called. And he was like, yeah, what'd they want? I was like, they want their clothes back. I went out the next morning to go home, and he had all the traffic cones on top of my car. He was a jokester. We had gotten a new coffee maker, and I didn't realize that start and pouring were two different things.
Uh-oh.
So I poured water, put the pot in, and hit start. Well, not only did it drip through, but the start button automatically puts the water in. So I overflowed the coffee, and it was everywhere. And he came in there, he's like, who the heck, used the coffee maker? I was like, I did. He's like, come here. And I mean, it was behind the cabinet, in the cabinets, on the floor, under the refrigerator. So the next day there was a big sign, Stacey Lowe is not allowed to use this new coffee maker. I mean, he was just a early character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had good times, you spend most of your time with them, so they are your family.
Yeah.
Than you do with your other, your regular family.
Yeah. Develop closeness.
Correct.
There.
We all are involved with our kids' stuff, fundraisers. Oh, here's $1 for a candy bar. We just support each other really good.
Yeah. People sometimes make donations. They'll send popcorn or pizza or whatever. Mm-hmm. What are you so tired of you don't ever want to see again? Pizza?
And I know
everybody thinks you want pizza.
Yeah, I know it's easy, but it's like, hey, we're going to get you dinner today. And we're like, okay, pizza.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see pizza anymore. It's, I mean, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your, thinking of us. But,
recommendations? What should people send instead?
Oh, tacos. We're always angry, hangry is what we call it. Tacos and, Mexican food.
Yeah.
Anything really, but yeah, it's pizza.
Would you want food you could put together yourself or something prepackaged?
Either or.
Okay.
I know that we had one captain that was pretty good when she heard stuff pretty much go off on the airs. She would send prepackaged foods. Hey, here's your guys' dinner. I know you guys have been, or if we're really short and we have to combine the city, we have captains that will send us food.
Yeah.
So, I mean, dispatchers are always hungry. Donuts, candy. We have a sheriff's unit around November. She'll bring a big bag of candy, and it's pretty much gone within 3 days.
Right.
Yeah, because you just mindless eating because you're at your console for 12 hours. So yeah.
Do you have a preference? Would you rather work more shorter shifts or fewer longer shifts? Is it better to work 8 hours versus 12 hours?
No, I mean, I don't know any different because when we did have the 8-hour shifts, I was still working 12s, 5 days a week.
Be forced over?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I don't really know a difference. I mean, we've had maybe a few brief moments where we got to go home on a regular 8-hour shift, but it was few and far between.
Yeah.
And so when they did these 412s, because sometimes we not only work the 412s, we do a 5th and a 6th day.
Yeah. What needs to change to get more people into the job? to have a higher level of staffing? What needs to change?
Honestly, that's a hard one because I think you can tell people verbiage wise about the job. You're going to work holidays. You're going to work Christmas. You're going to miss your kids' stuff. But until you're actually in there working it and knowing you're not going to be able to do this, I think that's what gets them. Oh, well, you told me this, but actually working it, it's like, oh, this is really happening. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can tell
they weren't
someone,
really prepared,
correct.
even though you told them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a type of call that you dread?
I don't
it's
like suicide.
Okay.
I don't like it when a family member walks in and finds them. I don't like those. It's very heart-wrenching. And again, the elderly people, when you've had like the elderly lady that'll call you, you can clearly tell that she's been married to him for many years and wakes up and finds him passed away and has no clue, what steps she needs to take. So she calls us.
Yeah. You're her first call.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And try to explain to her, what's going to happen. And, they get nervous. And I just try to calm them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell them, we're going to get somebody out there to help you and guide you in what you need to do. I'll ask him, if there anybody that I can call to possibly get there. But then again, you have to be careful with that because you don't want them be notified by you that a family member is passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's difficult. If you're training a new dispatcher and you're mentoring them, you're bringing them along, what kind of calls do you want them to have to take on their own?
I would say the suicide ones. That way we can talk about how to deal with it. Because, again, this job's not for everyone. You have to leave it at work, and sometimes that's hard when you leave. Also, maybe a robbery in progress at a store, so they learn to get as much information as possible. Suspect, if they left on foot, what kind of car.
Yeah.
Familiarize themselves on the process of taking the call.
Yeah. Getting all the pertinent information and all that. Is there a type of call that will be not the watershed exactly, but it's like, okay, you either are going to make it in this job or you're not based on how you handle this particular type of call? What would that type of call be?
An irate caller.
Really?
Yeah. Someone that's constantly yelling. Get here. Why are you asking all these, blankety blank questions, or, they'll hang up on you and call back. And, a lot of times they're short staffed. So you get the same call taker and they're like, you again, you ask all these questions, blah, 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 and that really, can, I don't want to say damage a person, but like.
You can either take that or you
correct.
can't.
Yeah. Like me, I'm just like, look, I'm just doing my job. This is what we're trying to get, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been there so long. I don't know. But that is one of the calls is an irate caller.
Yeah.
Especially like stores that are getting shoplifted. Well, he's walking out. Okay, he's getting in a car. Why are you asking all these questions? Just send officers. And I try to tell him, me asking questions is not slowing the officers down. I just need to know they're driving in. They can look for the car if it's driving past them, etc.
I would bet that a typical caller would have no appreciation for the fact that you are multitasking. You are sending officers. You're probably doing 5 or 6 different things at once.
Yes.
But they just are hearing you ask more questions and they get frustrated and yeah. Yeah. Have you seen, and maybe someone who was trying to be a dispatcher, someone trying to get into this field that didn't pan out, have you seen them just get fed up with that type of caller?
We've had people that went to lunch and never came back.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I've seen it, and I've seen it in their face. And I try to tell them, like, if this is not for you, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, who can come in here and have pretty much negativity every day?
Yeah.
Day in and day out. And who, it's not for everyone.
No, it takes a special person to endure that and to get through it. It also takes a special person to understand cops. I have been in the police car and listened to cops talk on the radio, and some of them are the worst mumblers. I am 2 feet away from them, and I can't understand what they're saying. And I'm there, I know the context,
right,
and I cannot understand a word that's coming out of their mouth. How do you understand that?
Piece it together. Like, it's repetitive, so you kind of know, they're running a name, so they need warrants, once, whatever. So I just piece it together. And I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty correct. Most of the time, sometimes I'll say, no, ma'am, I'm advising you, blah, blah, blah. And I just, okay, let's just keep moving.
Right.
So I just piece it together. And plus, I've worked with them so long that I just understand them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You get used to how they mumble?
Correct. Exactly.
Is it ever so bad that you need to like correct them? I mean, like please speak up, or I mean, how do you? Because I've heard, I was with a cop that was mumbling, and it was windy, but I heard one of the dispatchers say, "Sorry, there was wind noise," and made him repeat it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, was that always wind noise, or was that just how badly he was communicating?
Oh, yeah. I've told him, especially like if they go on a traffic stop.
Oh, sure.
I have them repeat because it's my job to know where you're at in case something happens to send somebody there. And I've even had there's a street in the South End that was just changed to Joseph Segura Road.
Okay.
And this officer did a traffic stop on that road. And I was like, I am sorry, I'm not understanding. Because we weren't told that it had changed. I literally had her spell it out for me.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, you're at Joseph Segura Road. Okay, 10-4. And then,
right.
I mean, because
right.
I would much rather them be angry with me, but I know where they're at.
What do you think that maybe a typical young officer doesn't understand about your job and what you're doing?
He's not the only one working.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not only dealing with people on the radio or air, but I'm doing the phones, and I'm entering stolen autos, and I'm entering missing persons, or I'm sending off hit confirmations to other agencies to confirm nationwide warrants. Like, sometimes I think they forget I'm one person, one set of hands.
Right. Do you ever just get frustrated, like just look it up yourself? Because they have computers in the car. There's some stuff they can look up themselves.
Sometimes, yes, but sometimes I'd rather them be correct than take someone to jail and say, oh, this ain't that person.
Right.
So, no, I mean, I'm old school. I've done it my whole career. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
But the young person that's gung-ho, I'm just one person. You know, and sometimes I want to tell them, you're not the only one working. You know, I have 20, 30 other officers and sheriff's units and community policing and SOU working. You're like, you're not the only one. So
yeah, and there are times where when you're dispatching, you are also taking 911 calls at the same time. Okay, that's not always 2 separate jobs. Sometimes you're doing both.
Correct.
And so, yeah, mercy sakes. Yeah, I've called in a few times just to say that I'm, available or unavailable as a chaplain, and I can hear the background noise, and I can hear there's a sound of the phone ringing, and that it sounds like tires screeching from my end.
Yeah.
But I know that's a 911 call ringing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be really quick here because I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I can tell you're busy. Yeah.
Not only that, but we also have several airs that are open on our radios that we also have to monitor. Other agencies, we all have regional radio channels that we monitor because when another agency gets in pursuit, they
want to communicate across agencies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we also have to monitor that and, just help each other because another dispatcher might be inundated with a lot of work and we also help. So we're constantly doing something.
Is that a difficult adjustment for some people doing the job to be multitasking like that? I mean, there's probably just some people who can't.
Correct.
Right?
Right. It's not natural. I mean, you have to learn it. And, I tell people, try to read a book and listen to what your friend's telling you and then a TV in the background. It's just, yeah.
I heard you say before that you only get 2 chapters in your book. What does that mean?
You get the 911 call. They tell you what's going on. Me as a dispatcher, I get it. I dispatch it. And, for example, a shooting comes in. Everybody's, of course, screaming. You get as much information as you can. As a dispatcher, I'm dispatching it. I have my officers running. We call it Code A, which is lights and sirens. They get on the scene, explain how many victims. The person that's shot and still living, they're carted off to the hospital, and we don't know if they've made it, lived, paralyzed.
That's where you start to not have new information
Correct.
being given to you anymore.
Yeah, so we don't ever really get the ending. I mean, sometimes we do, but a lot of times we don't. And a lot of people can't accept that. Well, what happened? Did they get the suspect? You just got to go to the next call and move on. You don't have time to... I mean, there are calls I do wonder, what happened? So,
is there any channels for you to, eventually get that information? Do you have somebody you can reach out to and say, hey, what happened to this victim or to that officer?
In person, yes, but I'm always nervous to do it on a recording because I don't want it to have to go to court.
Sure.
And say, why did this officer tell you A, B, and C? And then I'm pulled in.
Right.
So you have to be careful of that.
Right.
So I don't try to. Maybe if I'm out somewhere and I see them and say, hey, by chance, oh yeah, this is what happened, but it happens very rarely.
So there's barriers there that
Correct.
even prevent you from satisfying that curiosity and knowing how things happened. Now, see, and that's an interesting kind of stress, because what that is I've got my counselor's hat on here. You're being prevented from having closure. Mm-hmm. And so you've got all of these open traumas where you were the first person that was called. You were involved in sending people from point A to point B and managing the crisis. And then as the crisis evolved, you get left out. And there's just all these open-ended traumas.
Correct.
Do you have a way of dealing with that? I mean, is there a way that you can manage all of that?
I would say probably not. I just take the next call and just keep trudging through.
Wow.
It sounds maybe harsh, but I mean, that's part of the job. You just kind of have to, because to me, if you linger on what happened, the last one, it kind of overfills on the next call. Like you may not have as much empathy. I don't want it to overflow onto the next call. The person that's calling in is just a completely new person. They don't know what you just dealt with 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And if you have it affect on them, then it may not turn out like they want it. I don't want to be angry at somebody that's yelling at me about this and then, 911,
Is that where bad dispatching happens? Because a dispatcher lets maybe the cynicism or you had just dealt with somebody and they were lying to my face. You go on to the next call and maybe presume that the next person's lying. I've actually heard a call like that, and I thought, and people are like, man, that's a terrible dispatcher. And what I hear is I'm thinking that dispatcher's still dealing with a previous call in their mind.
Yeah, or they've done it so long that they don't like their job anymore, and they have no more empathy.
How do you manage to start fresh with a new clean slate of empathy for each caller? How do you do that?
I just do it. I've done it so long. I just do it.
God made you that way.
I get that asked a lot. How does it not affect you, Stacey? How does it, someone that's killed somebody or someone that has found someone passed away or someone who committed suicide, how do you do it? And I was like, I'm not trying to be rude or mean. It's just, I don't know them. I don't know how to explain it. I just don't know. Now, if it was my family, I may, years ago before my grandma passed away, her neighbor called 911 and said, hey, I'm trying to get hold of my neighbor. Her car's in the garage, but she's not answering the door, and that's not like her, nor the phone. Gives me the address, and I recognize it's my grandmother. And I get her all the information. I slammed my headset down. I was like, I don't care what you do. I got to go to my grandma's. Ran over to my grandma, plug in the code, walk in. At first, looked down the stairs, thinking she possibly fell down the stairs in the basement. She's not there. Go through the house yelling, Grandma, Grandma, Grandma. She comes out from her sewing room, and she looks at me like, what are you doing home from work? I was like, well, Mrs. Barry called and said, and she was kind of upset, and I don't want to talk to that old biddy. I was like, Grandma.
We thought you were dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought maybe you were hurt down the stairs or something, and it just, I kind of panicked a little bit because it was my grandma.
Yeah.
And I hate to sound like that, but it's
different when it's somebody personal.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had any other calls where you knew the caller or the subject?
Yes.
Yeah. What skills or attitudes make for a good dispatcher?
What skills?
Yeah.
Typing.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Because when they're going 90 to nothing, and you have to get information out, because all the officers have mobile data terminals in their cars, and they can all see all the calls citywide. If we're in a pursuit or something, officers can get ahead of it and possibly set up stop sticks. Listening skills.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't happen right away because, when you're on the phones, especially, that's because you're trained on the phones first, then you move up to the radio. Compassion, empathy, team player, that is a big factor.
Now, some of those, I can imagine you teaching someone how to do the data entry, teaching someone how to multitask. I feel like there's some of those things you can train someone on, and there's a pretty extensive training time to be a dispatcher.
Yes.
But being a team player, having compassion and empathy, can you teach somebody that, or do they have to already have it?
I would say they'd have to have a little bit of it, and you just polish them up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion, just, hey, you did it this way, but just think about it this way. Like, I try to give them different scenarios, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they do it on like the next call or the next transaction on the air or something. I think you kind of have to have a little bit of that.
If they just were maybe a little too short, a little not compassionate enough, or not working well with others,
Yeah.
what would you say? How would you help them be more compassionate or be a better team player?
Put yourself in their shoes.
Okay.
Just, try to think how you would react if this happened to you and how you would like to be treated. Like, do you want an operator being on the phone and screaming at you? Well, what's going on? What was he wearing? I mean, a lot of people handle, I want to say, stress differently. Like, you have the hysterical people, especially if they like get in a wreck or something, they're just screaming bloody murder because, they're shooken up, which is understandable. But just try to put yourself how you would be.
When I played football, I was an offensive lineman. And offensive linemen, if they're doing their job, no one notices them.
Correct.
And when you don't do your job, that's when the announcer calls out your name and number and whatever. The one mistake you made the entire game, that's when everybody notices.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like dispatch is very similar. That if you're doing your job well, if you're just nailing it, you become invisible. Where if you make a mistake or there's some sort of hiccup, then that's when everybody notices.
Oh, yeah.
and that kind of thing. Do you feel underappreciated as a dispatcher?
It has gotten better.
Okay.
Since I started. When I first started, it was horrible. Like,
really?
We were described as a glorified secretary's job. Like, the person behind the mic is just a voice that they don't like put two and two together saying, oh, that is actually a person.
Yeah.
It's just not someone that's talking. Because, when you do work active events, not only are they working it out in the field and dealing with it, but I'm listening to the panic or stress in the officer's voice. And sometimes I'm his only lifeline until other officers can get on the scene to assist him. So I'm trying to keep myself in check and, calm for him because they can feed off your energy or your excitement. But it has gotten better since way back when.
I've heard the compassion in your voice and the voice of other dispatchers when, like, an officer's on a foot pursuit and they're running and they can't key up the mic, and that they're in some sort of dramatic situation, but you don't have any details. And so I'll hear the dispatcher come over the air and say, are you 10-4? And there's this terribly long pause. I mean, it's only a few seconds, but it feels like an eternity because I'm on the radio listening and waiting, and I care, and I want to know how they're doing. And you'll ask again, are you 10-4? And I can hear it in your voice that you deeply care about these officers. And then eventually, finally, you hear this huffing and puffing. Yeah, I'm 10-4, I'm 10-4. They explain how it was resolved and whatever. And then you just have to go on and go to the next call. And God bless you. I can't imagine just putting that aside. It seems like it would be difficult.
Yeah.
If you're kind of counseling a fellow dispatcher who was just demoralized, kind of burned out, what advice do you have for somebody like that to get healthy again emotionally, to be able to keep doing the job? And we can't have everybody quit. We desperately need you. So what advice do you have for somebody who's a dispatcher and feels kind of like they're at the end of the rope a little bit?
Find an outlet.
What kind of outlets?
Well, for me, like, I love reading. I dive into books. I crochet. I recently just became a single mom, so I'm running my kids all over the place with friends and sports and everything. Sleep. I always tell people, make sure you get plenty of sleep because that is a big factor. But just mostly find an outlet and try to leave it at work.
A healthy compartmentalization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard when you first work there that you do take it home. I mean, there are some calls I do take home. And I sometimes think, just have an outlet, like just to think about what's in front of you instead of what you just experienced at work. Whether it's walking or running or working out or a hobby or your church or just an outlet.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. What would your sales pitch be to someone who's considering going into dispatch? If you had to give your little 30-second elevator pitch, what are the rewarding things of this job, or what is the reason to get into it?
Helping people. Being, I guess everybody sees it, the light in the darkness, because when that phone rings, there's a person on the other end that needs help, that needs your assistance, and providing that for them. As far as a dispatcher aspect, helping getting bad people off the streets. I really, enjoy when people get in trouble and they give fake names. I love digging, again, for these people and find out, oh, you got all these warrants. That's why you're telling me your name's John Smith and not John Peter,
Right.
So that's rewarding for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just love the job. I don't know how to explain it. There's something new every day.
Yes.
Every day.
A lot of variety.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's job security.
Yes. People are never going to stop being bad.
I had a lady last year that called on Christmas Eve on 911 and wanted to know if we were going to be open for Christmas.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's just something different every day.
Awesome. In your heart of hearts, what was your best day on the job?
That's a good one. When all my officers go home safe.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of good days then, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I want them to go home the same way they came in, all in one piece, and home to their families or their loved ones. Yeah. That's a good day. That's a good day for me.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stacey.
You're welcome.
Wow. Let me thank Stacey again. That was a fantastic look behind the scenes and into the lives of our dispatchers. She surprised me multiple times with the poignancy of her answers, and she impressed on me again the importance of the work that's being done in the communications center. I don't know how to recruit more people into dispatch, but I know that we need more men and women who are willing to take a turn serving in this vital role. If you have stories, wisdom, and encouragement that you'd like to share, please reach out to me. Specifically, if you know someone in law enforcement who is especially good at telling stories or has a particularly poignant story to tell, recommend them to me, and maybe we can work something out. My email is in the show notes, and you can also find Hey Chaplain on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
The suspect had broke into a house, kicked the homeowner out of the house, barricaded himself in there. We ended up at the front door of the house, sent my first dog Diesel in. Diesel goes in, I can see him searching. I stay at the front door and watch him. He goes into his bedroom. I can see inside pretty much the majority of his bedroom, maybe 20% of the room I couldn't see. He goes up on top of the bed, and he's up on the wall with his front paws, if you can imagine, standing on the bed. The bed's pushed up against the wall, up high, looking at the ceiling, sniffing. He's not finding him right away, and I call him back to me. I'm going to call him back, and we'll move in a little bit further and see what happens. I told the guys, I said, hey, he's on odor. The guy's still in there. He's definitely on odor, and that's a common thing with police dogs. They'll go up high on walls and stretch their neck out and put their nose towards the ceiling or the sky. When they start smelling, they're trying to get that as much scent as they can in. He comes off the bed. I call him back to me. Diesel in Dutch plots to call him back to me. He starts heading back to me, and he gets about to the door frame, stops, turns around, starts sprinting at the bed, and dives between the mattress and the box spring and grabs the guy by the leg.
Wow.
He had closed himself in between that mattress.
So the suspect is sandwiched.
Remember, he was on top of the bed. From the time I called him back, he got to that door, he spun around and went between it and got him by the knee. That one always has stood out to me, and I've had, well over 100 apprehensions over the years, and that one, for some reason, I still to this day can't figure out how he knew he was between that mattress and that box spring, and he basically told me, I'm not coming back to you. Boom, got him.
Technically, he was disobeying orders.
Right? 100%. You know what? I'll take that one all day long.
If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guests and are not necessarily representative of the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain. And as always, pray for peace in our city.